Hello and welcome to Access Asia. In this edition, we look at some of the health, economic, and social costs of the pandemic. The coronavirus is spreading in Pakistan at one of the fastest rates in the world. The crisis exposing shortcomings in the government's response and the healthcare system. And with the race for a vaccine trumping sports, Japan's hosting of the Summer Olympics has been postponed until next year. But there are doubts whether the big event will ever pay off. And love in the time of corona. We go to the city of Wuhan, where the virus first emerged, and after life under lockdown, marriages and divorces are surging. Well, in recent weeks, the numbers of coronavirus cases and fatalities have soared in South Asia. 1.7 billion people live in Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, more than a fifth of the world's population. And all three countries are poorly positioned to fight the spread of the virus. In Pakistan, lockdown restrictions were eased in mid-May, bringing relief to the economy, but none from the pandemic. Shazeb reports from Lahore.
In recent weeks, Pakistan has been hit particularly hard by COVID-19. This neighborhood in Lahore was placed under lockdown after 40 cases were detected. More than 53 neighborhoods were sealed in the city.
ये लॉकडाउन सिर्फ आप लोगों के लिए है और ये आपने मास्क नहीं पहना हुआ लिहाजा आप अंदर नहीं जा सकते सोशल डिस्टेंस रखना यहाँ पे तौहीन समझते हैं ये ना तो मास्क पहनते हैं ना हाथ मिलाने से ग्रेज करते हैं ना गले मिलने से ग्रेज करते हैं इसकी वजह से यहाँ बढ़ रहा था यहाँ पे
In March, the government imposed a countrywide lockdown for 40 days. But despite a massive surge in cases recently, it refuses to repeat the experience. Its main argument, preserving an already weak economy.
इनको बाहर निकालें शटल के ना अगर ज़्यादा मसला है तो फिर इनको अरेस्ट 10 बंदे इस स्पेस में आपको 15 बंदे खड़े
सर इनको एक मेहरबानी फरमा के एक दफ़ा वार्निंग दे दें सर मैं इसको
शटर बंद नीचे कराओ It's a very delicate balance that we have to maintain. At one end, we need to take care of our economy. At the other end, we also have to ensure that the cases don't go to an extent where the health system is totally compromised.
Pakistan's public healthcare system barely has 3,000 intensive care beds for a population of about 220 million people. Because of lack of space and equipment, hospitals are forced to refuse patients. The situation has sometimes led to violence against healthcare workers.
तो मोरल तो डेफिनेटली ही इस वक्त कम्युनिटी का लो है फिर लॉकडाउन में नरमी की गई उसके बाद जिस तरह लोगों ने एसओपीज़ को मजाक बनाया लाहौर के जितने बड़े हॉस्पिटल्स हैं वहाँ पे बेड की जो ऑक्यूपेंसी रेट है वो 80 to 90% हो चुका है
The situation is likely to worsen. Pakistan has not yet reached the peak of the epidemic, which is expected at the end of August and could infect nearly 1 million Pakistanis.
After spending weeks at sea, dozens of Rohingya refugees were recently rescued off an Indonesian coast. Locals were angry that authorities had initially refused to let the asylum-seekers come to dry land over coronavirus fears. Many Rohingya have fled Myanmar or refugee camps in Bangladesh in recent years, attempting perilous journeys in hopes of finding a better life.
Rescued from the brink. This is the moment that locals on Sumatra's northern coast took matters into their own hands, hauling Rohingya families ashore. After the nearly 100 asylum seekers were plucked from an unsafe wooden boat by fishermen, Indonesian officials refused to let them land, citing fears over the coronavirus. Local residents were outraged by the thought of sending the emaciated group back to sea and towed them ashore themselves.
karena kita semua tengok orang itu manusia, kita pun manusia. Cuma dari semenjak kemarin sampai sekarang pemerintah belum ada solusi apa-apa. Kami rakyat
The local government has since softened its stance. The refugees have been tested for COVID-19 and are being provided temporary shelter while the authorities decide whether they can stay in Indonesia. Here, they're finally afforded a moment of peace and prayer. Time to reflect on their 4-month ordeal at sea.
Kita ada beras, ada masa saja mau beras saja ada makan, sama ada kecang-kecang itu saja makan. Kalau minum air, kita punya kain itu basah di laut. Lepas tu dia apa-apa pusing-pusing air itu saja minum. Kadang ada hujan punya air itu minum.
Rights groups fear large numbers of Rohingya a persecuted Muslim minority from mainly Buddhist Myanmar, may still be trapped on boats at sea.
The pandemic, of course, has also disrupted major sports. Japan would have been in full-on Olympic fever at this point, but the Summer Games have been delayed. The move is a blow not just to the athletes who compete or the fans who cheer them on, but to Japan's economy, the government, the taxpayers, and the businesses, all of whom had a vested interest. For more on the story, I'm joined on set by France 24's Yuka Royer. Yuka, when Tokyo won its 2020 bid, it said there would be moderate costs attached, but it's turning out to be quite a different story.
Well, already before the coronavirus pandemic, Tokyo was under pressure for not reining in ballooning costs of the Games. Organizers had said that they would use existing facilities, but ended up building new stadiums or doing costly renovations. Now, its updated official budget announced late last year stood at about 11 billion euros. Now, that's still about the same level as other recent expensive games like London and Rio de Janeiro, and far below Sochi or Beijing. But in reality, the Games are estimated to cost more than twice that amount, especially with the delay that's set to add about 5 billion euros to the bill. Now, the IOC has said that it will pay up to 710 million euros out of that, but that's just a fraction of the added cost. The big question, obviously, is who will pay the rest? Businesses will be under enormous pressure to contribute, but private funding accounted for about half the budget anyway, and the bulk of the money would have come from taxpayers anyway. And at the moment, after the coronavirus pandemic, not too many people are willing to pay more, obviously, after the economic carnage left by the health crisis, which left a lot of people either out of work or with reduced income.
And now, in the absence of a vaccine or even effective treatment, there's a lot of doubt whether these games will even take place next year at all. What's the mood like in Japan?
Well, there is that huge question mark hanging over people's head, especially with a second wave of infections reported around the world. One recent survey shows more than half of Tokyo's residents think that the Games should be postponed again or cancelled altogether. And even among those who still want the Games to be held next year, about a third of them said that the event should be scaled back, including without spectators. Now, Tokyo Governor Yuriko Koike, along with the Japanese government, had insisted up until March to go ahead with the full-blown 2020 Olympics. But now, obviously, that plan has been changed. She admits that the event will probably need to be simplified. Now, exactly how that will be done has still yet to be determined. It all depends on how the pandemic will evolve in the months to come. But a scaled-back version, if you can imagine, will deal a heavy economic blow to Japan as a result of reductions in everything from ticket sales to tourism income to hotels to jobs. Many Japanese workers at the moment have other things to worry about than the Olympics.
And it must be said that these Olympics had an extra symbolic value attached to them, an opportunity for Japan to show it had reemerged after the 2011 Fukushima disaster. What's the situation like there?
They were to be used as an opportunity to highlight Fukushima's recovery from that disaster. A local baseball stadium was chosen as one of the venues for the Games, and the torch relay ran through Fukushima back in March. If the event is held next year, it will increase rather the symbolic value of it, because it will mark exactly a decade since the 2011 nuclear disaster. So Japan is eager to turn the page, but the nuclear crisis is still ongoing. Many people are still unable to go back home. They're either living elsewhere in Japan permanently now or in temporary housing nearby. Radioactive wastewater from the nuclear reactors is running out of storage space and may need to be dumped into the ocean soon.
All right. Thank you very much, Yuka Royer. And if you'd like to see more on this topic, our correspondent, Constantin Simon, made an in-depth report on how these Olympics were to be a sort of recovery games after the Fukushima meltdown. And you can see that report on our website, france24.com. Now, much of the world learned that as we were trying to avoid one disease, life under lockdown could have a side effect on our personal relationships, for better or for worse. In the city of Wuhan, where the virus first emerged, nowadays there is both strong demand for marriages and divorces. Olivia Salazar-Winspear reports.
Lockdowns long lifted and Wuhan's residents are back in the streets. Shops are busy and so is the registry office. These couples are lining up to say yes. That is, they're applying for a marriage license. Demand has surged with 3,000 more marriage requests than at the same time last year.
就比产生了比以前就是没有这么密切生活的时候不一样的感情。
Yet others in this city have less to celebrate. Wei Hu is packing his bags and moving out. After 5 years of marriage, his wife has asked for a divorce. Living through the lockdown in this apartment with his parents and his partner proved to be too much of a strain.
每个人都会带来一定的不同程度的心理压力。你没有收入的情况下，你要去偿还这个债务的话，你肯定会压力会更大。 所以说，这样一点一点的去积累的话，就会使人爆发。
Usually, his lawyer deals with one divorce per week. At the moment, it's more like one per day. The number of couples separating and seeking to dissolve their marriages has seen an upturn across China as the confinement comes to an end. Testing times for long-term relationships, but young love seems undeterred if these romantic photo shoots are anything to go by.
就是这样子，不戴口罩，其实咱们自己新人的话，其实相对来说的话，也感觉就回到以前嘛，回到就是疫情之前一样的感觉嘛。
In China, photographs are traditionally taken before the wedding, meaning this couple is still looking hopefully towards the horizon of married life.
That's it for this edition. Thanks for watching, and please stay tuned to France 24.